Hi, this is David Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, our new producers, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, as always, we're happy to have you along for the experience. We have a sponsorship this week, and it's a very special sponsorship, if I say so. Dear Rabbi Orlofsky, thank you, K'vod Harav, for everything the Rav does and for all his shiurim and podcasts. I'm going to interrupt this at the moment to tell you about a phone call I got from someone in Toms River, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's just outside of Lakewood. Phil calls me up and he says, I have to thank you. I've been meaning to make this phone call for a long time to thank you for your shiurim. I drive from Toms River to Brooklyn. I listen to your shiurim. I get a tremendous chizzuk from it. And I just wanted to thank you so much for it. And I'm sure that I'm representing hundreds of people who feel the same way, just never got around to calling you. He says, but the real reason I'm calling you is because I met someone in Toms River who told me that he had a very bad experience in the chinuch system, and he went off the derech. And he says, and even though he wasn't keeping anything, he listened to your shiurim. He says, and then he heard you tell a story. Full disclosure, I don't remember this. I don't remember it. I was telling it over at my table, and my son says, I remember this. I remember when it happened. So that's enough edus for me. And the fact that I don't remember something is not such a raya. But says, I heard Rabbi Orlofsky say on a tape that these two girls came to the door on a Friday night. We were already in our Suda, and they forgot where their Suda was. They didn't know where they were going. And they probably told me the name. I looked it up in the book, but they must have been renting. The name wasn't there. I said, okay, so you'll stay here. They joined us for the Suda. Now, I've done things like this before. That's why it didn't obviously make such an impression on me. Anyway, apparently, as the story goes, in the middle of the Suda, the balabas managed to find them and said, I'm sorry for the whole mix-up. Please come to us now. I said, listen, they're already sitting. They're at the Suda. You'll take them next week. They're here already. We don't want to let it go. And this fellow said, when he heard that, he said, never in my life did I ever feel like I was wanted and that anybody wanted me. And so he went off to Israel and came back, and he's from today. And I don't remember the story, but it's not out of character. Let's just say I'm used to doing things like that, which I don't even think twice about. So when you say this, it reminds me of that story. But this is the part that I found even more interesting. I'm one of those who, when I discovered the Rav's shiurim and podcast, went back and watched any and all of the Rav's shiurim that I could find online, going back as far as possible. We're almost up to 300 episodes. So that's Mesiras Nefesh. A person really, you deserve a plaque for that. And if we ever make merch, I'll send you a plaque. I would like to sponsor the episode Le'ilui Nishmas Rachamim Ben Geula, whose yortzeit is on Tisha B'Av. So this will be coming out before Tisha B'Av. So this should be a schus for them, all the learning that we do in the chizzuk. Thank you again, K'vod Harav. May the Rav continue to be marbitz Torah, barabim, and give chizzuk and inspiration to many more people ad bimheira ve'esrim and beyond, with health, happiness, and all good things. And may we be zocheh to see mashiach bimheira beyameinu. Amen. Absolutely. And, it's not too late. This Tisha B'Av, we can make it into a yontif. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, Tisha B'Av was celebrated as a yontif. And Mitzvah Hashem. I like that a lot better. I like that a lot better than the way it's going. So this is our video for the 9 days, and I wanted to try to put the 9 days into a perspective. Because 9 is a very important number in Yahadus. 9 is just before 10. Okay, that's not much of a chiddush. What do I mean by that? It means that in the ones column, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Ches, Tes, all of those are the ones column. They represent individual things. Once you get to 10, and if you look in base 10 how it works, it means that you have a single digit, and now you move over to 2 digits. You have 1 and a 0. That's a new mitzias. And that's called making a tzibur. A tzibur is 10 people. It's a very important point to remember, meaning that you can go to the Siyam Hashas, and the last Siyam Hashas, if you watch very, very closely, you can see in the video of shiurim around the world, there's 2 seconds of me. I mean, it's literally 2 seconds. But I think that really made the whole evening for many people. I give a daf yomi every morning here in Har Nof. There are people who come from America every now and then and stop in. And I also give one online that I've been giving since we started in Brachas this cycle. But, tens of thousands of people come there to daven bimheira. The first 10 people bring the Shechina. And that's why Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Ches, Tes, Yud, which represents a tzibur, the 3 letters that come to meet it in the opposite direction is Mem, Lamed, Chaf, Melech. Because once you have a tzibur, then you have a melech. And 10 people make a tzibur, and that becomes complete. That's whole. And it doesn't matter what you add onto it, they're joining the tzibur. I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I've had this experience many times. You go to a shul, and you're waiting for a minyan. Now, in many shuls, this is not an issue, but let's say you're davening in one of these shtibel, where it's a pickup minyan. It's not necessarily at a set time. So you start off, 3-4 people, you're waiting, you get up to 7, 8, you know what I mean? As soon as you hit 10, and you start Ashrei for Mincha, 3 people walk in the door. And it happens, many times I've seen this, because they weren't zocheh to bring the Shechina. They weren't zocheh to be part of the Asar Rishonim, the first 10 who create the minyan, create the tzibur. And then, it doesn't matter what you add on to it. I heard once from Moshe Shapiro, and I don't know what the source is. I think it's an Arizal, but I'm not positive, so don't quote me. I'm sure my fact checkers out there will give me the correct source. Yeah. Melech Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What's Melech Malchei HaMelachim? What is that Lashon? King of kings. Why don't you say Melech HaMelachim? So, Moshe said that there's 3 types of a tzibur. There's 10 people, there's 100 people, and there's 1,000 people. And those are the only numbers, right? From 1 to 10, the ones column, right? That's not a tzibur. But you come to 10, when you go from 10, you move up to 100, you go up to 100, you move to 1,000. That's the last number is Aleph. What about Revava, right? Yeah, Revavais just means a lot. So the number that's associated with it is 10,000, but 10,000 is not the number. The last number is Aleph. And that obviously brings you back from the beginning to the end. You start with Aleph and you go to Aleph. Obviously there's a relationship between those two. So Melech over 10, Malchei HaMelachim over 100, over 1,000. That's it. That's as much as we count to thousands. And when we use 10,000, it's very interesting. The Maharal says the number that represents this world, not total shleimus. Total shleimus in this world is 6. And that's why when we came out of Mitzrayim, we were 600,000. So we had the ones column, the hundreds column, and the thousands column. But just to get in the tens column, we sometimes say shishim ribai, so we can get in the 60, to get in the tens. But those are the only ones that are there. So 10 is shleimus. 10 is where we reach a level of completion. The zocheh cottage says that Yaakov was Yud, which is shleimus, all the way down to his Akev. He was complete. So that's, the number 10 is complete. That's the end. It's very interesting. The number that represents Esav is the number 11. And the reason for this is, as you can see in his confrontation with Yaakov, where Yaakov encouraged him to take this gift. And he says, take it. Yesh li kol. I have everything. I mean, I have shleimus. I'm not chaser anything. I have everything. And Esav says, yesh li rav. I have more than everything. Like the Chazal say, kol ma'isiv gareya, everyone who adds actually takes away. Because there's two ways to destroy shleimus. You could take away some of it, take a bite out of the challah beforehand, so it's not a shalem. Or you could add to it, and by adding, destroy the shleimus. What I describe as the mustache on the Mona Lisa. You didn't help. You didn't make it better by adding on that extra thing. Yeah? When home computers first came out, so they would have these programs where you could make a flyer with a dot matrix printer. And you could pick all different types of fonts and all different sizes, and people would make a flyer, would come out looking like a hostage note, you know what I mean? They would, each line, they would take a different font, a different size. It's too much already. You know, the more you're adding to it, the worse it is. I have a friend of mine, Shalom Katz, who's also a caterer. And I was learning with him, and he comes in, and he's geschmetted. He says, what's the matter? He says, I catered a chasana last night. It was a high-end chasana. And I bought prime beef roasts. And I roasted them till they were just medium. Pink on the inside, just the way it should be. And, you know, I was planning on serving them. And when it came time to put out the main course, I couldn't find the roasts. They were all gone. So I asked the worker, what was it? What happened to my roast? He goes, oh, I started to slice it up, and I saw it wasn't cooked. So I boiled up a big pot of water, and I dumped them all in to boil them some more. Go, ma'isiv gareya. Yeah? And he was, if you know food, you get very emotional about food. Food is like, you know, you take it where it gets just medium, you know? My son Shlomo, who was on the show, runs a business called Shloim's Meats, where he smokes meats and makes different types of things, you know. And he's got all kinds of fancy thermometers and things, and measure everything that it should be just right. He has a timer on his smoker with a remote control to be able to monitor it, to make sure that it's just the right amount. And if you overcook it, so that's it. You destroyed a good piece of meat. You know? That's what I do all the time because I eat my meat well done. That's how I grew up. That's how Jews always ate their meat. You know, my father used to say, he was a florist. He used to work with caterers. You know, he says the hardest thing for a Jewish caterer is how to come up with 400 end pieces. Because everybody wants the end piece, because that's the one that's cooked the most. And that's how Jews like it. You know, Jews never used to eat medium, certainly not rare. This was you had it well done. If you were a little more modernish, medium well. But my children eat their meat, it's still mooing. You can't tell them walks around the table. You know, it's a different thing altogether. You know, so you know. there's a certain point beyond which it's no longer that pink, that medium, and it starts to get well done, and that's it. It's lost it. And my daughter Mindy, so she's here now. She's going back to her kiruv work on NYU campus. And she has students here now. She brought a trip, so she's still doing follow-up. But while she's here, so she makes a whole Shabbos, very, very geschickt. She bakes challahs and she makes all kinds of things. And one of the things she does is she makes medium boiled eggs. I know how to make hard-boiled eggs. You take the water, you put the eggs in, you boil them for a very long time, and they come out, and they're hard-boiled. Yeah. I know how to make soft-boiled eggs. You put them in, you take them out while they're still raw. But medium is a very careful timing to be able to get it just right so that they're cooked just enough without being soft-boiled or hard-boiled to get them to medium-boiled. And that's a big treat. Most of us can't manage that. That's that kind of timing, yeah. But you cook it more. So this guy thought he was doing a great thing, and my friend Shalom didn't think so. He didn't find it that it was called Ma'asav Goreya Mamash. You could see it. The more you do it, it doesn't become better. It's the 9 days, and I just made a lasagna, and I haven't given a recipe in a long time. I don't think I've ever given my lasagna recipe. I don't know how to recreate this exactly in America because I've been making it here in Israel for so long. I take 8 containers of 9% cottage cheese. I mix in a bag of grated cheese. I add some salt and pepper and dried parsley. Mix it all in together. I boil lasagna noodles. I don't use the Israeli lasagna noodles, those ones that are like short and triangular. They have to be American lasagna noodles. And sometimes you can't get them here. So I was just in England. Project Inspire is starting in England. It was really a fabulous thing to see. Yitzchak Sandler and I.A. Sampson are trying to start Project Inspire, which I'm sure most of us are familiar with, which is an organization that inspires from people to go out and do kiruv. So they're trying to start it up in England. And so I had the zchus of walking up and down the streets of Edgware in the pouring rain on Shabbos, speaking in many, many different places. In the end, we did a program on Sunday night. Sunday morning, I spoke in Hasmonean. I spoke for Torah Way, which is an organization there. In between, I got to spend time with my good friend, the Frankels. I first started going to England maybe 35 years ago. And Danny Kirsch, one of the legends of Kiruv Rechokim, and particularly in England, who had started the JLE, placed me there in Hendon. And I had the zchus to have a kesh with them to this day. So we got together, and then I went to Dovid Mincha, and on the way back, I stopped off from Gruzinski's bakery to buy some gingerbread cookies for my children, my grandchildren. And Michael Frankel pointed out, he says, see that supermarket, they have everything. I said, really? Because there's 2 things I can't find in Eretz Yisrael. Let's see if they have them here. American cheese. I wouldn't think they'd have American cheese in England. And lasagna noodles. And they had both of them. I brought them back, Baruch Hashem. So I made a lasagna in his chus. Yeah. So that's my filling. I boil them up. And I have to make sure I have the filling ready and the pans ready, because as soon as I pour them out, pour a little cold water on them, and then I can put them right into the pans so that they don't stick. And so I spray a little oil on the pan, I lay up the noodles, and then I take tomato paste. In America, I never use tomato paste, but here, basically, they only have tomato paste. So, resek agvaniot, it's really tomato paste. And I put that over the noodles, and I put in filling, and then I put another layer of noodles, and then more sauce, and then more filling, another layer of noodles, and then I put sauce on top, and I sprinkle cheese on top, bake it in the oven for as much time as you need so that it doesn't get too well done. And I don't know. I've never timed it. You have to keep checking it. And me, of course, with my memory, every now and then my wife will say, were you supposed to take out the lasagna? And very often it was too late. I mean, it was still edible, but it wasn't like it was supposed to be. It was a little too well done. You have to try to take it out just before. I have the same experience Friday night. We made the breaded chicken. It's my wife's recipe. She found it many years ago. Basically, you take the chicken and you rub it with mayonnaise, top to bottom, and then you take a cup of matzo meal and a quarter cup of onion soup mix it up together, and you sprinkle it on the top and on the bottom. You cover it, and you bake it, and you take it out before it's too well done. Especially because you end up heating it up for Shabbos. And if it gets too well done, then it's not tasty. It has to be just juicy enough. Last week it came out perfect. I took it out too early for me. Yeah. So when you take it out too early, it was just enough. So those are two. People have complained. I haven't given recipes in a while. They go, gosh, if you're going to just keep talking Torah, you might as well call this a shiur already instead of a show. That's how it came about. Those of you, my sponsor for this week obviously remembers that show where I said it's a show, not a shiur, because I said I'm going to give recipes. So that takes it out from the realm of a shiur. Although when I do give shiurim, I also give recipes. So I have to share. But the point is that all these things are koa ma'isiv gareya. If you're leaving the lasagna too long, and you're leaving the breaded chicken too long, and you're leaving the roast too long, assuming that you're like my children, and all these kind of things, so you didn't add to it. You have to stop. You have to stop at a certain point. Shakai, the name Hashem, Shakai she'amar dai, said to the universe, enough. Too much is not good. Yeah? And the Raya Ladava is that rain is a bracha. Mabul is not. And therefore, you have to know that too much of a good thing. I always think of that when it's raining and someone says to me, a little rain never killed anybody. I said, no, I don't know. I'm remembering the Dar Mabul, and I don't think it did too well for them. so, yeah, maybe a little rain never killed anybody, but a lot of rain does. Yeah. So the idea is that too much is not a bracha. Too much is. I read an article in Scientific America about a book that came out called Twinkie Deconstructed. For my frum audience who may not be familiar, there is a commercial baked good place called Hostess. You might be familiar with Drake's, which has an OU. You might be familiar with Entenmann's, which has an OU. Hostess does not. It's one of the holdouts that's still treif. And one of the things they make is a Twinkie, which is basically this kind of yellow cake with filling inside of it. And someone put out a book called Twinkie Deconstructed and explains what goes into it. Now, this to me was mind-blowing. One of the things they add in is butter flavoring. And this chemical, which gives it the butter taste, is toxic. When they open up the container, they're wearing hazmat suits. And you have to add just a tiny amount. With a tiny amount. Because you add too much, it's toxic, you'll die. It's poison. But tiny, tiny little amount. Yeah? I remember when I go to America before Pesach, I try to buy some of the Pesach treats that you can't get here. And one of the things I bought was Jell-O, kosher Pesach, with Splendor, diet Jell-O. So there was a fellow there who was one of the head mashgichim for the Reuben's Hashgacha. He said to me, Tzarich Hodat, Splendor ze chometz gamur. Splendor is mamish chometz? I know that there are people who are makbid about certain of these things, NutraSweet, certain things like that they hold it might be a kidney's derivative, but Splenda, I never had heard that, and it has a good hashgacha on the Jello. It was kind of strange. Anyway, I go home and I look at it, and then I notice that there's a kosher for Pesach with a Reuben's hashgacha on RC Cola, diet RC Cola, and it says with Splenda. So I bring it into him, and I said, if Splenda is chametz, how are you giving hashgacha on this? He said, I'll look into it. And he came back and he told me, all of the diet RC that is made in all of Israel, is this much. If you're listening instead of watching, it's the size of like a tomato sauce can. That's how much Splenda is used for everything. It is so highly concentrated. Therefore, when you have a Splenda packet, there's mamish tipa of Splenda, and the rest of the powder is all filler. And it's the powder that's chametz. I found that fascinating. But tipa. And everybody knows this, There's an expression in English when you feel like someone's being maudlin or you're over the top. Say, it's saccharine sweet. If you take an extra spoonful of sugar, it doesn't come out the same way as if you take an extra, little tablet of saccharin or another packet of it. It changes the whole taste of the of whatever you're doing. It gets over the top. Call Ma'asav Goreya. So that's why the way Esav takes away from the shleimus is by adding on. That's why he's 11. So when we bring the kataris, we bring 10 nice-smelling spices, and then we add in chelbana, which smells bad. That 11th represents Esav, and the other 10 all work together to cancel him out, and the contrast comes out making it smell better. But that's the bad-smelling number 11. The top of the Mishkan was made with these 10 pieces of beautiful embroidery with pictures, colorful, and that went on top of the Mishkan. Nobody could see it unless you went inside the Mishkan. And the only one who went inside the Mishkan was the Kohen who cleaned out the menorah, the Kohen who lit the menorah, the Kohen who once a week switched the lechem upon him, and the person who in the morning and the evening brought the kataris, and the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. Otherwise, you didn't go into the Mishkan, so nobody could see it. On top of it went this covering of goat skins, and it completely covered it. There were 11 pieces of goat skins, because seir is seen as a sign of evil. So when it says seirim merakdim, the goats were dancing, it's referring to, it's really referring to demons. So it's not by chance that that Esav went to Har Seir. It represents Esav, and that's why there are 11 pieces to cover it up to protect it from Esav. And that's why it's interesting. The 11th child that Yaakov has, as soon as he's born, he says to Lavan, now I want to go home. Ki noilad es sitna yishal Esav. Now the one who will destroy Esav has been born. That's Yosef. Why? Because Yosef is the koyach of Haisafa in a positive way. He can add more things to the shleimus of Klal Yisrael without taking away from it. If you will, a little challah roll is a shalem, and a big bar mitzvah challah is a shalem. They're both shalem, there's just more of it. That's the koyach of Yosef, to be able to be mosef on it. And that's why we know Abraham made Shachris, and Yitzchak made Mincha, and Yaakov made Ma'ariv. But you know that there's what's called the Shiva Roet Tzon, which most of us probably know as the Ushpizin. And these 7 individuals also represent the lowest 7 spheres: Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. So Chesed is Avraham, and Gevura is Yitzchak, and Tiferes is Yaakov. They made Shachris and Kamayr. And then Netzach and Hod is Moshe and Aaron. Moshe made Slichos as a tefillah, and it's set up like a tefillah. There's a Ashrei and Chatzi Kaddish, then you say it, and in the end there's a Kaddish Tiskabel. Yeah? And Aaron made Ne'ilah, and Dovid HaMelech made Tikkun Chatzos, and Yosef made Musaf, the extra offering, the additional offering. And that's why Yosef is actually the star of Parshas Pinchas, because Pinchas gets added on to the kahuna. Why? Because he's Ben Putiel. So they were making fun of him. Putiel is Yisro, who fatted cows to Avodah Zarah. But Rashi in Ve'era says Putiel could also be Yosef, who controlled his taivas. And because of the koyach of Yosef, Pinchas was able to be added on, to be moisif to the kahuna. The Benos Slavchad, who come from Menashe, who comes from Yosef, add a parsha into the Torah. By the way, there's another parsha that's added in by Pesach Sheni. That's because the Gemara says they were tamei because they were carrying Atzmas Yosef. They added another parsha to the Torah. And Hashem tells Moshe to put his hand on Yeshua's head, and he puts 2 hands on. He's Moisef. And Yehoshua is, of course, from Ephraim, from Yosef. So the ability to be able to add on, the call Mosef Gereya. So 10 is shleimus, 10 is complete. And that's why we very seldom access those top 3 spheres. We mostly work in the 7 lower spheres, right? They correspond to parts of the body. Chesed is your right arm, and Gevurah is your left arm, and your chest is Tiferes. Your right leg is Netzach, your left leg is Hod. The makom of the bris milah is Yesod, and woman is Malchus. That's why Malchus is always in the feminine. Shabbos Malchasa. Yeah, it's a feminine manifestation because it's makabel from all the others. That's of course the Magen Dovid. We could have made a 7-pointed star, but we don't. We make a 6-pointed star, and the hexagon that's formed in the middle is Malchus. It's makabel from all of the other ones. That, by the way, is how the Arizal set up the Seder plate like a Magen Dovid. Yeah, to get in all of the different spheres that these things represent. But, so those are the bottom 7 ones, and that's how we usually work. The extra 3, that's usually outside of this world. Now, we know this by the number 8. 8 is always outside of this world. Anytime you find the number 8, 8 days of Hanukkah, it's outside of the normal functioning of the world. The 8th month, which is Mar Cheshvan, is outside, doesn't have any holidays. It's a special time. Shmini Atzeres, we don't do anything. 7 days, we use a lulav and an esrog and sit in the sukkah, and then on Shmini Atzeres, nothing. We count 7 days, 7 times, and we come to Shavuos, the 50th day, which is like the 8th after all the 7s, and there's nothing on Shavuos. If we didn't have a minhag of staying up all night and eating milchiks, there'd be nothing on Shavuos. Because 8 is outside of this world. And certainly 9, and certainly 10. Yeah? That's it. That's as far as we go. But only on rare occasions do we access 8, 9, and 10. And that's why everyone knows the famous vart on Parshas Bo. And that is that Bo, b'gematria, is 3, because there are 3 makos in Parshas Bo. somebody pointed out, Bo is the first two letters of the name of that parsha. Okay, that's a little bit of a stretch because there are only two letters, but okay, that's Parshas Bo. Va'era, the first two letters equals 7, and there are 7 makos there. But is it by chance that there were 7 in one parsha and 3 in the other? It's not by chance. It's because we always make it 7 and 3. Avram Avinu is promised 10 lands, and we get 7 of them. 3 we will get beyameinu mashiach. So the 10 is often divided up in the 7 and 3. Ba'asar ma'amaros nivra olam. The world is created with 10 expressions in 7 days. So I showed you how this lower 7 spheres represent parts of the body. The upper 3 are called the moichin. The left brain, the right brain, and the skull. Yeah? Chachma, Bina, and Keser. That's the upper 3. We very seldom are able to access those. Seres Mei Tshuva is one example where we move into that highest realm, and then we mamish reach the level of Keser and go into the Kosher Kedoshim. That's also the idea of Eser Kedushas Hain, when it says there are 10 levels of Kedusha, and the final one is the Kosher Kedoshim. It also says Asara Yuchsin, there are 10 different levels. And the last levels are Yisrael, Levi, Kohen, Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol, who is the 10th Yichus, on the 10th day, Yom Kippur, goes in the 10th level of Kedusha to the Kosher Kedoshim, and that is completely out of this world. That's why Yom Kippur is completely out of this world. It doesn't play by any of the rules. And otherwise, tshuva can never work. Tshuva is completely out of this world. And that's why when the Silsur Sharm is explaining that HaKadosh Baruch Hu added in Rachamim, but he says, but tshuva tinasein bechesed gadol, not with Rachamim. It's a chesed. It's beyond everything. So you move outside of that. So that's the relation between the 9 and the 10. 9 is the maximum number of pieces. I said, ooh, ah, ah. I said, ooh, ah, ah. I said, who knows 9? I know 9. 9 is the months before a baby is born. After we sing Echad Miyodea, we sing the English version from Uncle Moshe. I think I asked Uncle Moshe once where he got that from, and he said that he sang it in NCSY. I don't know where it originally came from. I'm sure my fact checkers out there will let me know. But 9 of the months before a baby is born. If you think about that, that means the baby is born in the 10th month, because you have to finish the 9th month, and then the baby is born. Because I don't know if you remember this, when they would sometimes advertise toys, and they'd say, some assembly required. So you're going to have a baby. Some assembly required. We got to gather together all the body parts and all the internal organs and all the cells. We got to put everything in the right place. We got to put this thing together until we end up with a baby. Ta-da! Babies can survive earlier than that. But as Mr. Wizard said, not recommended. Yeah, it's a hard thing on the baby. The lungs aren't developed, things aren't developed. So science has reached the point that we can keep babies alive. Baruch Hashem. But the way it was originally meant is you need 9 months to get everything finished the way it's supposed to be. By the way, I call Ma'asav Gereya, if they stay in there too long, then the placenta starts to age, and that's not so good for the baby either, you know. And then the baby becomes bigger and bigger, and it gets harder to deliver. You know, one of my daughters had a 10-pound baby. She didn't even deliver it; he just climbed out by himself. Hi, it's me. That's tough, yeah. Anybody remembers the cartoon Baby Huey? But the idea is it takes 9 months to get it all together, and the 10th month it's fully made and it comes out. The Tisha Yamim is period. 9 days. It's the maximum amount of separation. There is no tzibur. There is no togetherness. Right? The Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of sinas chinam, because we hated each other. There was no achdus. We were not together. When we're together, we get the Torah, ki ish echad b'lev echad. Achdus will bring us together and to be able to give us the power to be able to be successful. When what did Haman say? I can destroy the Jewish people. Am mefuza u mefurad meina amim. They are parad and mefuza, spread out. They're not together. They're all over the place. He didn't understand that the Jewish people have the ability to come together, even when we're spread all over the place. That's the famous story from the Bayless trial, where this Jew in Bayless was being tried for killing a Christian child for his blood, which of course was a blood libel in the classic sense of the word. And they basically put Judaism on trial. They're bringing all kinds of different chazal and things to show that Jews don't value the lives of non-Jews. And one of the things they brought was Tem nikru Adam ve'ein umaz ha'olam nikru Adam. You're called Adam, and they're not. Non-Jews are not called Adam. So he says, you don't even think non-Jews are human, so of course you could just kill them. And the Rebbe answered, we have a lot of different words for people. Yeah. B'nai Shes, B'nai Noach, Ish, Enosh. Adam is a word that implies shleimus. Before man and woman were separated and they were one being, they were called Adam. Adam is a lashon of together. He says, only we're called Adam. Why? And the Rav looked at the crowd and he said, because there's a Jew on trial here in Russia, and every Jew around the world is trying to help him as best they can, whether they can intercede, pressure their government, daven, give money, whatever they can do to help. If there was a Russian on trial here, how many Russians would care? I remember during Operation Moses and Operation Solomon, when Israel went in to save the Ethiopian Jews, because people were starving in Ethiopia, and they airlifted them to Israel, there was criticism. Why are they only saving the Jews? Why don't they save the Christians and the Muslims? And Israel rightly said, why don't the Christians save the Christians? Why don't the Muslims save the Muslims? Why in the world do you think that only Jews have to save everybody and you have no obligation? Why? Because you don't care about anybody. You don't care about anybody. I heard this story many years ago. I'm trying to remember where I heard it from. But the person who told me the story said like this. He said this guy was sitting next to this Israeli guy, religious guy. He was on an El Al flight. And he says, where are you going? He says, I'm going to Boston. He says, do you have family there? He says, no, I've never been to America in my life. I don't have any family there. He says, why are you going to Boston? And he points to his son sitting next to him and says, he has a medical condition that's going to kill him. And they tell me that there's a doctor in Boston who can help him. And I'm taking him to Boston. He says, wow, how much is the operation going to cost? He says, $50,000. He says, do you have that kind of money? He says, no. He says, what are you going to do? He says, I'll worry about it when I get there. Right now I'm trying to save my son's life. When I get to Boston, I'll try to figure out, to see if I can find someone who will give me money, help me out. So the guy says, excuse me. And he got up and he walked to the back of the plane and he turned around by the galley, walked up the other side of the plane, went all the way to the front of the plane, turned around, came back, handed him $50,000. Ki atem dikru adam. Yeah? And somebody told me that there was some soldier or police officer, I forgot the story now, who had gotten killed. And they set up a fund for him all around the country, and they raised $5,000. Atem dikru adam. I'm mefuzah mefured, but Haman's right. Our enemies know more than we do. The more that we have separation, the more power they have over us. Because we're in the 9. Tisha B'Av is in the 9th. And Tisha B'Av ends on the 10th. Because the 10th takes us out of the 9 into a new reality where we move beyond it. You can look at Tisha B'Av from 2 points of view. Tisha B'Av is the day that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, or Tisha B'Av was the day that we began to bring Mashiach. It's the day we began to build the third Beis Hamikdash. And that's why Tisha B'Av is very strange. Because they did not set fire to the Beis Hamikdash until the end of the 9th, and it burned through the 10th. But already halfway through Tisha B'Av, we get up off the floor, we're sitting on chairs. What's happening? It hasn't even been set fire to yet. There's a machlekes whether you're supposed to celebrate it on the 9th or the 10th. But okay, if you're not going to celebrate it on the 10th, or commemorate, I should say, if you're not going to commemorate it on the 10th, so at least the whole 9th, it hasn't even been set fire to yet. And the answer is because we're making that transition from the 9 to the 10. We're moving over to that extent. The Baal Shem Tov supposedly gave a haftocha. If you have 9 people and you're waiting for a minyan, I guarantee you'll get a 10th. I don't know what his makor was. Maybe it was when Abraham was saying, maybe there are 10 tzaddikim in the town, and he said, well, maybe there's 9, and a Kadosh Baruch Hu, you'll be the 10th. You'll be mashlemit to a tzibur. The 9 goes into the 10, takes us into a new reality. And that's the koyach that we have. So these are the 9 days. They're the time of period and separation and of pain. And in Mitzvah Hashem, we will go from the 9 into the 10, and to be able to have that opportunity to be able to experience an emes hagula. And that brings us to the question and answer portion of our program. By Anonymous, what's your perspective on the protests in Israel about the hostages? Should Netanyahu resign? Should we have new elections? Is there an obvious solution we're not doing? Well, now that Torah Anytime is producing the show, and the podcast usually comes out the same day we film it. Usually we film it in advance. But I'll be there. So hopefully I can get my son Yaakov to come in and discuss politics. He knows all about politics in Israel. And so as of now, as you know, Gimel, which is Aguda and Degel Torah, and Shas have left the government. So what's going to happen, I don't know. So when you're asking me about the government, should we have new elections, etc., that's a different question vis-a-vis the army. Yuli Edelstein, for some reason, has decided to push very heavily now to draft all the yeshiva bachrim into the army, and this was not the deal that the religious parties made when they came into the government, and he's breaking all the agreements, and I don't know exactly what his motivations are. But that's the Metzius. So as far as that goes. But before this crisis came along, I don't understand the demonstrations accuser. I remember Netanyahu many years ago, there were these peace protests. And he said, do you think there's anyone who doesn't want peace? Everybody wants peace. The only question is, what price do you pay if you pay an existentialistic price? Abba Eban, who was the ambassador to the United Nations, called the pre-1967 lines, borders of Israel, Auschwitz borders. Right? It was a guarantee to destroy a country. The country is only 9 miles wide. How hard is it to destroy a country 9 miles wide? As we saw in 1967, how close the situation was to becoming desperate. So you think Netanyahu doesn't want the hostages to come home? Right? The only question is, after what Hamas did, so if you say, Hamas will say, let bygones be bygones, we'll give you back whichever hostages are still alive, we'll give you the dead bodies, you give us all of the terrorists that you captured, and we'll remain in power here in Gaza, and catch you next time. Right now we're not in a position to attack Israel, but hopefully we'll get resupplied, because we'll have control of all the tunnels coming out of Egypt. We'll get more missiles, we'll get more things, we'll get more arms, and then we'll come in and we'll kill another 1,200 of you and capture another 200 of you. It might take us a few years to get it together. So is that the price that you want to pay? So when people say bring them home, it's like anybody saying don't bring them home? Hamas says we're going to release the terrorists. Nah, it's not worth it. We don't want to pay for the bus fare. Is anybody saying that? Of course not. The only question is, at what price? Netanyahu? Okay, we talked about this under conspiracy theories. If you go back, you'll see for a few episodes ago, we talked about conspiracy theories. How could it be that the same Israel, which bought a beeper company, managed to sell all these beepers to Hezbollah, set them all off at the same time, didn't know that Hamas was coming in with an army this size? That they were rampaging? That they were unable to pull themselves together? How is it the head of the Mossad, the night before Shmini Atzeres, told Netanyahu, there's no imminent threats, don't worry about anything? How come when the attack started, they didn't wake him up and tell him we're under attack? I'm suspicious. It could be incompetence, and it could be that the left knows they don't have the votes. They cobbled together a government by taking the left and some people from the right, who the only thing they had in common is they hated Netanyahu, and Arab parties, and put together this, this shotness, taruvas, of all kinds of different things. There was no way it could possibly stay together, just to keep out Netanyahu, and the whole thing fell apart. So Netanyahu, there is nobody on the world stage. I don't know if there's anybody in the world stage, but certainly nobody from Israel who has that command of the world stage that Netanyahu has, who has the experience and the leadership that he does. Do I trust Gantz? Absolutely not. Lapid? Not in a chance. Bennett? Forget about it. So who exactly? Lieberman? Who do you think is more competent and capable than Netanyahu? I don't even understand the question. So with Netanyahu there, I have more trust for him than I do for any of these other people. And the problem is he's fighting the deep state. So this guy from the Mossad, what he did was unforgivable. And the Supreme Court says, no, we don't want you to fire him. He says, what do you mean? He's incompetent. Look at what he did. He's responsible for 1,200 deaths. Yeah, but I've talked about this in the past. They passed a law in the Knesset that the Supreme Court, there was only 40 people in the Knesset when they passed it out of 120, because no day afternoon, nobody expected this. Yeah, that there's something called the reasonableness clause. Doesn't matter what law you pass. There's no constitution in Israel. The judges can just say, no, we don't think that's reasonable. No, we don't think it's reasonable for you to fire him. Based on what? No, we just don't think so. Is there a law you're basing it on? No. Just our own opinion. We don't find it reasonable. And they can stop anything that they don't think is reasonable. I mean, talk about a dictatorship. And the joke is that the left says we're defending democracy. It's the most undemocratic thing that ever. It's totalitarian. It's ridiculous. So Netanyahu has to try to fight. Trump talks about the deep state. Forget about it in Israel. Impossible. It's absolutely impossible. And that's why the first thing he did was try to reform the Supreme Court, and people took to the street. And now it turns out that the Biden administration was giving the money for the demonstrations, for USAID. It's unbelievable. But forget about all that. Put all of that aside. Who's the alternative? And that's why even though the religious parties dropped out of the government, they didn't put up a no confidence vote. Because who do you want there instead of Likud? But they broke their word, etc. So we have no choice. Edelstein wants to just drag Yeshiva Bachram off to prison. One guy on the radio said, we'll just set up prison camps out in the desert and with tents and just send them all there. Who talks this way? What kind of hatred is this? Talking about sinas chinam. So, is there an obvious solution we're not doing? When you watch these talk shows, and I don't suggest that you do, they're just horrible. Yeah. There's this English fellow, Piers Morgan, who it's clear is not very bright. He's just not a bright guy. I listen to the things he says, they're just not bright. And he's interested in one thing, and I heard him say it once beferish, he wants clicks. So he'll get some radical Arab, and he'll get some Israeli who's willing to come onto his show, and anyone who does, obviously, is not among the most knowledgeable, and he just keeps saying, genocide, genocide, you understand? And when anybody asks him, so what would you do? What's your solution? No one has any answer. Hamas came in, killed a bunch of people, and took our hostages. So you say we shouldn't be attacking them. What should we do? They want to give our hostages back. What should we do? I don't know. But this is terrible. This is terrible. Okay, so what should we do? So there's nobody in Israel that I trust at this particular time more than Netanyahu. There are certain people who are made for certain moments. Winston Churchill was there to lead England in World War II. There are certain moments that make a man. Lech Walesa, I think that's it, from Poland, who started the Solidarity movement, brought down communism. That was his moment. There are certain people in certain situations, Lincoln during the Civil War. There's certain people who are put in a particular place. And Victor Davis Hanson said, there's certain people who they pull them out for a moment of leadership that they come in to save the day. But then, General Patton, the Nazis said afterwards the only one they were really afraid of was General Patton. And they didn't want to give him command because he was a difficult person. But he was a great general. And the Germans knew it. So they had no choice, When we were losing the Korean War, they brought this, Ridgway out of retirement, and he managed to win the Korean War. He just understood how to go. He was that person for that moment. And I think at this particular moment, one of the smartest commentators out there is this professor of classics called Victor Davis Hanson. I listen to a lot of these different people to get perspectives, and he's, I think, by far the smartest guy out there. And he speaks clarity with simple terms that everyone can understand. He doesn't hide behind jargon like some of these people. And he says, Netanyahu in the past year more or less destroyed Hamas, more or less destroyed Hezbollah, more or less destroyed Iran, more or less destroyed, Assad in Syria. unbelievable things he did. How many leaders could do that in the course of 2 years? He says, and he was written off. People were screaming, he should resign, he should resign. And look what he accomplished. So do I think he's the right person for the moment? Yes. What's going to happen with the yeshiva draft, I don't know. And we really should have one podcast where we talk about that. Maybe I can convince Yaakov to come in and share his perspective. But in the meantime, that's my perspective on that. Okay, well, that's it for this episode. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can sign up for one of my online shiurim. I have a daf yomi every day. I have a Mesilas Yesharim once a week for women. I have a tefillah class on Sundays. We're finishing up the first parsha of Kriya Shema. You can ask a question, leave a comment, sponsor an episode. We're almost out of sponsors, so I thank those few people who came in and bailed us out in a nick of time. We definitely need your help. And you can sponsor a question and answer. You can sponsor Parsha and 5. We're bringing them back for Devarim, Mirza Hashem. And that's it. Until next time, I am Rabbi Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. The Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode. And we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah, anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.